Hey everyone, a little story I guess at this point. As I was doing my first set of builds, I think I was about 4 videos in, and a friend of mine asked me a few questions about the format. And they were pretty specific questions. He was like, oh, why are you testing in Lake Doric? And why are you soloing that giant and cursed shore? And why are we clowning on these hydras? And as I explained it all, he was like, you should really have a video explaining this stuff. And I thought it was a fantastic idea, and I always meant to do it, but I kind of never took the time. So I figured when I started this next series of videos, I would take a few minutes and explain some of my reasoning and the purpose of the builds and where they fit into my gameplay loop, I guess is the term, and put up a few warnings. When it comes to support in Guild Wars 2, that's kind of my jam. It's actually my preferred playstyle in most MMOs. I've always loved the feeling of, speccing a tune to turn my friends into absolute beasts. So let's start with the most obvious question. Who and what are these builds for? I don't play a ton of top-end content. While I have done some T4 fractals, I tend to tap out at around tier 3 when it comes to pugging. I've barely raided in Guild Wars 2. It's not that I haven't enjoyed the raids, I've loved them, but I've got a few reasons why I haven't done a whole lot of them. But what I think Guild Wars 2 does best, where it's at its most fun for me, is instance PvE content like dungeons, fractals. Man, I love the DRMs, and the raids I've done have been really great. Holy shit, did I no-life some strikes for a while. This is personally where I enjoy the game the most. I also, when I find myself playing this content, find myself in situations where support is needed. And while I get that the game is absolutely doable without support, I just don't find that's the way most people play. People camp red circles, newbies blow dodges. Well, hell, we all blow dodges. Lots of players don't understand the value of might or protection, and they don't build for them. So the short answer is, these are group builds for the rest of us. They are builds for when your friends and you just want to derp some T1 fractals, or maybe a couple of people who've never done them before, things like that. So they're builds you can take into meta events and make sure that wipes don't happen. They're the kind of builds for carrying friends who are new to the game through dungeons. It's just everyday stuff, really. Or at least that's how I use them. So, with all that said, please don't use these builds in raids or pugging T4 fractals. In the case of raids, a fair number of the builds that I'm going to put up for support are going to use Minstrel's gear. This gear provides toughness. Toughness is part of the aggro mechanic on many raid bosses. And this means that if you take the gear into raids, you could very well, create massive problems for your squad, as you'll probably interfere with established tanking and aggro management strategies. So the end of that one is just don't do it. There are raid builds on meta battle. Go get one of those. When it comes to T4 fractal pugs, the why is a little more complicated. These builds are absolutely competent support for T4 fractals. I've run them there. I know they work. But the established meta of T4 fractals when it comes to support assumes that you're bringing 2 important boons to the party, these being quickness and alacrity, and probably to a lesser extent Aegis. Not all of my builds provide one or any of these, so it's important to keep in mind. This meta really tends to extend to the T4 fractals no matter where you sit on the issue of a meta in pug group content, whether it's needed, whether it should be needed. It's important to make sure that you're doing your part when it comes to playing in open groups. So part of that's running an accepted build. And when you're running with your friends, well, they know what to expect. That's one thing, okay? But the idea that you can just play what you want in T4 fractals is in my mind unrealistic. And if you're going to pug T4 fractals, play the meta, don't play these builds. As for the format of these videos, it will not deviate too much from the established format that's gotten me over. We will be doing meme intros, a little bit of me mouthing off, some demos. In terms of gauging their performance, however, I felt that with support builds, you need to be a little bit more objective than subjective. You can't really just throw a build into a scenario and say, hey, this build worked here. There's too many variables, and most of those just boil down to other people, okay? So, To that end, I've tested these builds a little differently. I've run them through a few different scenarios involving fractals, full CM DRMs, strike missions, dungeons, things like that. I've run ARC DPS to measure boon uptime and outbound healing, so I have a pretty good idea of what they're doing in terms of boon output and heals. We're going to be rating them that way. We still have the fashion breaks, so that's just about it. I'm committed to doing about 3 of these, and after that, we'll see where it goes from there. Hey, if you want to support these builds and the channel, it's the usual: like, comment, subscribe, but most of all, hey, just let me know if you're running one of them and if they're working for you. That's it. So hey, thanks for letting me mouth off here for a few minutes. I hope you enjoy the series, have fun in game, and min-max your real life, and we'll see you again in the mists.